This is kind of a deep cut, but for whatever reason it lives rent-free in my mind. Does anyone remember? It's from the second season of Smash. It's right before Megan Hilty sings, "They just keep moving the line." And Deborah Messing is introducing it, and the rest of the Broadway industry at the time doesn't think Bombshell is going to go to Broadway. So she introduces the performance by saying, here's a song or whatever from Bombshell, coming to Broadway this season, and it's a whole like pointed thing. Well, what I would like to tell you today, tiny people in my camera, is that I, Mickey Jo Theatre, am coming back to Broadway this season. In fact, this month. This week. Okay, not this week. No, that one was a lie. But in less than 2 weeks. Let me tell you more. Oh my god, hey, if you're meeting me today for the first time, my name is Mickey Jo, and I am obsessed with all things theatre. I am a professional, accidentally international theatre critic, seeing a whole bunch of different theatre and making video reviews of the shows that I have seen here on YouTube, where I am also a social media content creator. I live somewhere in the intersection of critic and influencer, which the more you think about it, are kind of converging ideas anyway. Now, this time last year, I had just finished my first ever trip to New York to go and see a bunch of Broadway shows. It was magical, it was life-changing, it was completely emotionally overwhelming, and I just fell in love completely with the New York theatre district and that community and all things Broadway. I also made a whole vlog series about that first trip that you can go and watch here on my channel if you like. I made a bunch of reviews from that trip. I saw shows like Chicago and Funny Girl and Sweeney Todd. And because the reception to the content that I shared both here on YouTube as well as on Instagram, on TikTok, has been so positive and so enthusiastic, it's been possible for me to go back 2 more times to New York in the last year. My stagey fiance Erin James and I went back in October, where we went to the Broadway flea market and we saw shows like Pearly Victorious and Here Lies Love. Then we went back for a shorter surprise trip at the beginning of this year to see shows like Monty Python's Spamalot, as well as Harmony and How to Dance in Ohio. But at the time I made it very clear that that was not going to be the last trip of the season, because there are so many new Broadway shows which have opened and will have opened by the end of April. That's because the cutoff for eligibility for the Tony Awards is right at the end of April, so shows want to open within that last month so they can be eligible for the 2024 Tony Awards, which are a huge deal and a huge financial boost to any show who is able to win and or get nominations. And the landscape of Broadway has really changed since our last visit in January. We knew that a lot of the shows that we were going to see maybe had limited lifespans. Things like Harmony and How to Dance in Ohio closed shortly afterwards, but between January and now, there is a different show at the Barrymore, there is a different show at the Belasco, there's a different show at the Hayes, there's a different show at the Friedman, there is a different show, I mean there's new shows opening at a bunch of theatres that were dark during that time, like the Nederland, like the Schoenfeld, like the Jacobs, like the Golden. There is a new show at the Music Box, there is a new show at the Marquee. Everything is happening over the next few weeks, which is why I'm going to be spending 2 weeks on Broadway in New York at the end of April, essentially the second half of the month of April. And I'm really excited. I'm always overjoyed to be flying back to New York. I get to see all of my New York-based friends, which is really exciting. I get to eat all of the amazing food. In fact, what we're doing, because this is kind of ridiculous, so I'll tell you, is we are going to the Olivier Awards on the 14th. And this is a huge event in the London West End theatrical calendar. It's absolutely unmissable for Erin and I. So that kind of shaped when we were going to go to New York, because the Oliviers are very late this year. Normally they're earlier in the month, but that's happening on the 14th. And so we're flying to New York on the 15th. And the suit I want to wear for the Oliviers, which is one of the suits you're seeing behind me over here, is a fairly restrictive one. So between now and then, I'm putting myself on a very uninspiring diet and doing a lot of fitness and boring things like that. So when I get to New York, best believe I'm going to be wearing comfortable clothes and eating everything. We are talking Magnolia Bakery banana pudding. We are talking all of the Schmackery's and Schmackery's ice cream cookie sandwiches. We are talking, the chocolate mousse from Bond 45. I have so many exciting ideas about all of the food I'm planning to eat when I get to Manhattan. But 2 weeks on Broadway also gives me the time to see a hell of a lot of shows. And so what I thought I would do for this video, because I've announced trips before, is let you know about my thought process behind the shows I'm planning to see, because not everything is locked in at this stage. In fact, this may be the least locked in my show schedule has ever been before a trip, which is a little bit stressful, but also it's a very busy time because critics are going to see these shows, Tony nominators are going to go see these shows, everything is happening in April. And as an an independent member of the press and as an influencer, there are various different channels through which I occasionally go and see Broadway shows. Sometimes I just buy tickets outright, and so there's a lot of emailing back and forth that's happening right now. But in terms of how I'm shaping my show schedule for this trip, there are a bunch of different tiers of things. There are the shows that I've already got confirmed. There are the shows that I absolutely must see. There are the shows that I want to see if I get the opportunity, and 2 weeks will probably give me the opportunity. There are the shows that we might see because, you know, we're willing to, we would go back to them, but they're a lower priority. There are the shows that we probably won't see for various reasons that I will explain, and then there are some shows that we will almost never see in New York. And I'm going to talk you through that list, starting at the bottom and going up to the top. And if there's anything that for whatever reason I've missed out of this list, I think I've covered every show that's going to be running on Broadway. I don't have as many insights into the off-Broadway sphere, so do please let me know if you have any good recommendations. New York viewers, tiny people in my camera, as always, let me know in the comments section. Send me an email, send me a message if you're attached to one of these shows and you want to get in touch and you want to make sure I come and see your show and create influencer content or come and review your show, then please get in touch as well. Oh, also, I should say, if people want to do a meetup while I'm in New York, I am always down for a meetup. It's always lovely to see your smiling faces. It's something that we will probably end up planning closer to the time, so do get in touch. Do let me know in the comments down below if you're going to be in town between the 15th and the 28th of April, if you would like me to do a meetup. I'm hoping the weather is better than any of our previous trips, honestly, but the forecast seems a little bit crazy in Manhattan right now. So let's start with the shows that I probably won't see ever on Broadway. And never say never, but I really don't see these happening. Number one is Appropriate, which is transferring to the Belasco Theatre. Now, I saw this at the Helen Hayes, and because this is going to be a limited run, and because there are other things I want to see in the meantime, I don't feel any need to go and see this again. I also think it's a play whose power lies in its shock value, which was a thrilling part of seeing it the first time. I loved this play. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. By all means, go and see this. This is not me not recommending this play. This is like one of the plays of the year. Sarah Paulson is fantastic in it, but we've seen it already, and we don't feel the need to go and see it again. It's not a play I feel the need to return to. Next up is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, currently running at Broadway's Lyric Theatre. Sadly, a production I will never be endorsing, I will never be seeing, I will never be encouraging anyone else to see, because doing so has a financial implication. You are financially inherently supporting the author of the original Harry Potter book series, J.K. Rowling, who just recently launched another needless, offensive, transphobic tirade from her social media platform on the app formerly known as Twitter. Her behaviour incites hate, it's completely unsupportable, and I have no interest in anything Harry Potter or Harry Potter adjacent. I am never going to be seeing that show anywhere in the world, unfortunately, because I would like to eventually visit the Lyric Theatre. Next up is MJ the Musical, another show that I have complicated feelings about, which I articulated in more detail in my recent review of the West End production, but it's that West End production that is what's precluding me from seeing it on Broadway. Right now, Tony Award winner Miles Frost is playing the role in the West End, and I feel like he's the biggest draw for me to go and see this show. I don't know if I do need to see it again, having seen it the once. Certainly I don't feel the need to go and see it on Broadway. Then we have The Lion King. Now, I actually would like to return to The Lion King. I've only ever seen The Lion King on tour. I've never seen it in London. I've never seen it on Broadway. I did get to go to the Minskoff Theatre to see a one-night-only concert reunion of the original cast of Ragtime, and so I've kind of ticked off visiting that theatre, seeing a show there. And every time I've travelled to somewhere internationally recently, if you don't know, I went to Hamburg just recently, vlog pending, and I went to Sao Paulo, Brazil last year. I've been to see shows in Paris before, and all of those places have international productions of The Lion King. And so it's a show I always feel like I could see in another country, but I don't feel the need to see it on Broadway. And then finally is Moulin Rouge. Now, I've seen Moulin Rouge on Broadway in 2 out of 3 of the previous trips that I mentioned, and sadly I have been disappointed by it every single time for various reasons, mostly because of the inavailability or the sadly lackluster performance of the individual I was going there to see. And it's always a situation where I'm just going to Moulin Rouge for one performer, and then I either didn't get that performer or I was disappointed, and the rest of the supporting cast and just the vibes of the show, I just don't enjoy it for some reason, for whatever reason, as much as I enjoy the West End production. I will go back to Moulin Rouge at the Piccadilly Theatre in London. I don't know what it would take casting-wise to get me back to the Moulin Rouge at the Al Hirschfeld. They'll probably pull something out of a hat and I'll go back, but at this time I'm saying to myself, I never end up having a good experience at Moulin Rouge on Broadway, so I don't think I will go back. So those are the shows I don't see myself ever seeing again in New York. Here are the ones that I don't think we will do on this trip. So at the top of this list is And Juliet, the jukebox musical currently playing at the Stephen Sondheim Theatre. I love this show. I think it works even better on Broadway than it did in the West End. I'm excited to see the UK tour that is about to be coming round, but that's a part of why we don't need to see it on this trip in New York. Most of the cast is the same from the last time that we saw it in New York on a previous trip, and so I just don't feel the drive to go and see it again. Then we have Chicago, and as much as I would love to see Robin Herder in this show, we saw Chicago back in January because of Ariana Madix from Vanderpump Rules going into the show as Roxy. It was also the first show we ever saw on Broadway because Jinx Monsoon was in it then as Mama Morton. Jinx is going back into the show this summer, and so we've seen Chicago on 2 out of 3 trips so far. If you asked a lot of like seasoned New York theatre goers, I don't know how many of them go back to see Chicago regularly, and if they do, it's because of the casting. So again, this is a show that could surprise me and pull out some fantastic casting, but unless they do, I don't think we're going to see it, and I don't think we need to see it on this trip. The Play That Goes Wrong. I would actually be intrigued to see this because I'm endlessly fascinated by how an American audience takes in a mischief theatre show. This is a show that's still running in the West End. It has UK origins and it's currently playing off-Broadway in New York, but there's not really anything about it that is making me feel like it's vitally important for me to see it on this specific trip. Next up is Wicked. You know I love Wicked. Last summer I saw Wicked in 3 different countries in like 6 months. I will always go back to Wicked. Again, it's specific casting that will get me there, and Donna McKechnie is in the Broadway version right now, but I'm hoping she's going to be in it for long enough that I could maybe see it on a future trip. That's what I'm thinking with Wicked. Then we have Hamilton. Now, it's taken me a really long time to go back to Hamilton. I saw the UK tour not too long ago. I am trying to go and see the London production because there's some really exciting people in that at the moment as well. And I would absolutely go and see this in New York. I feel like that's the birthplace of the musical Hamilton, so you have to go and see it there. I mean, you could say the same thing about The Lion King, to be fair, but I really would see Hamilton in New York. I just feel like, again, there's nothing about it specifically right now that makes me feel like I need to see it on this trip. Same for Book of Mormon. This one is there pretty much because I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, and I would like to eventually tick off that theatre. Back to the Future is also on this list, and I would like to see Casey Likes in this show, but I've seen the show before multiple times. I've seen Roger Bart do it multiple times, so again, I just don't feel like I need to see it right now. After a cast change, maybe, because I do think Back to the Future is going to run longer than the critics believe, but right now it feels like, why would we go to New York to see Back to the Future when we have Back to the Future at home? I'm absolutely going to contradict myself with that later on, just you wait. Finally, Aladdin. Now, I know I said I didn't need to see The Lion King in New York. I actually would go back to Aladdin because I enjoyed it way more than I thought, and I just love being in the New Amsterdam Theatre. My goodness. But I don't think we need to see it on this trip because I think most of the cast are going to be the same. They're just celebrating their 10-year anniversary on Broadway, so that's very cool. And I believe there's something they're doing in partnership with the Disney Store, so we'll probably visit that and check that out. But I don't think we'll go back to the show. Whew. That was a lot. Still with me? Let's carry on. So next up is the shows that we might see on this trip. They're not my highest priority for various reasons, but I am intrigued about each of them for their own reasons. So first up we have Patriots. This is opening at the Barrymore Theatre where we saw Harmony earlier this year. I saw this play in the West End with some of the same cast members, and that's my reservation about needing to see it on Broadway. I didn't love it necessarily when I saw it in the West End. I mean, I thought it was very capably written and very capably performed and very capably directed. I just thought that it sort of told a less exciting version of the story that it had at its fingertips. Maybe I would feel differently about the Broadway version. God knows I feel differently about shows that I make return trips to, but as of right now, I don't think I need to spend a show slot going to see Patriots, but I might. Who knows? Then we have Six. Now, I've seen Six upwards of 20 times in my life in a bunch of different countries. I have seen Six on Broadway in a previous trip. I've seen Six in London, in Scotland, in Amsterdam. I've seen the Six UK tour in multiple different parts of the country. Everything about this is telling me, Mickey Jo, you don't need to go back and see Six on Broadway. However, there are some exciting new queens in the cast. Specifically, I would love to go back and hear Jasmine Forsberg's rendition of Heart of Stone. I think that would be thrilling. I loved her in Here Lies Love. I've loved everything that they have released recording-wise, and all of the unofficial recordings I had heard prior to that. I think she's sensational. I think she's a star. She is vocally incredible, so that would tempt me to go back to Six. Then we have A Beautiful Noise, and it's like never say never with this one, because I have been seeing more and more stuff about it that performers have been posting from being in the show, and I am intrigued. I'd heard that Robin Herder was a huge highlight in the show and now she's left, but also Amber Ardolino has been posting content from it and that's been getting me excited, so I'm like, maybe with a beautiful noise, maybe I'll do a Thursday matinee, who knows? And again, it would tick off another theatre I haven't visited before. I'd get to go to the Broadhurst. Then we have Kimberly Akimbo. Now, we are going to be there for the closing performance. We do not have tickets to the closing performance because I think when that was announced, we didn't know what our dates were going to be. And at this time, we have said to each other, we don't need to go back and see Kimberly Akimbo again because we saw it on our October trip on the basis that that might be the last chance we would get to see it. We didn't know if they were going to post a closing notice for early January. They've extended further than we thought. They're closing at the end of April for political reasons, I might add. But we do both really love that show, and so I could absolutely see us getting tempted, especially if we end up on an evening when we don't have any other options. I can very much see Erin being like, maybe we go see Kimberly Akimbo. Wouldn't surprise me if we end up back at the booth. Not for the closing show though, because that I expect is very sold out. Then we have Hadestown. Now, if you've been paying attention to my Hadestown coverage, you know that I've just been getting more and more in love with the show. Erin is a Hadestown superfan at this point, and we're really in love with the current West End production. Having now found even more to enjoy about it, I would love to go back to Broadway and bask even more in its brilliance. I think a Hadestown Broadway return is inevitable for us. We both want to go back and see it again at the Walter Kerr, and we want to go see Jordan Fisher. We've heard great things about his performance, but he's going to be in the show for a little while, and they have like a revolving door of other cast members coming round and coming through. At the moment, I do want to see John Briones as Hermes, but I'm thinking if we're going to be back on Broadway later in the year and Jordan is still in the show, that may be a better time to see Hadestown. Then there is Merrily We Roll Along. Now, I don't know why I'm even putting it on here, like I'm going to be able to get tickets to Merrily We Roll Along, but I have declared it the best show on Broadway right now. I stand by that, and so if the opportunity arises to get decently priced tickets to Merrily We Roll Along, or if we win a lottery or something, I'm going to say yes to Merrily We Roll Along. I'm not turning that down, so that is always going to be a yes on my list. Then we have Little Shop of Horrors. Again, we've seen this on 2 out of 3 of our previous trips. Corbin Bleu is going back into the show, who I loved last time as Seymour. He was so good, and he's going to be joined by Jinx Monsoon, who we saw in Chicago. I think this is a thrilling, iconic piece of casting, and I would say yes in a heartbeat if I wasn't sure that tickets again were going to be very hard to come by, but I am quite seriously thinking about it, especially if you would like to see a How Was Jinx Monsoon in Little Shop of Horrors video here on my channel. I am very much considering doing a review of that one if I can get some tickets. Then we have some Broadway and Off-Broadway plays. There's a play off-Broadway called Scarlet Dreams. I only know about this because Andrew Keenan Bolger has been posting about it a lot on Instagram. It's a play that he's going to be doing off-Broadway, and it deals with a lot of AI themes, which I find both intriguing and terrifying, but is something that is very present right now within the theatre industry, in creative elements, in Broadway shows, using it for their design features, I will say that much. And so I'm definitely intrigued, but it hasn't even started previews yet, so I don't know what the vibe is like, I don't know what the buzz is. Then we have 2 plays on Broadway, Mary Jane, which has just started previews, and An Enemy of the People. An Enemy of the People has never been the most compelling Ibsen to me. There's a production of it here in the West End that I haven't been to see, and I think had I seen that, I would want to see the Broadway one as well, so I could do a compare-contrast. Maybe I still will. Again, if this is a video that you would like to see, it's an interesting concept, having simultaneous transatlantic revivals of the same play that are very different productions. Maybe I've just talked myself into it. Maybe that's what I will do. And then Mary Jane, it's purely just because I haven't really heard anything about it yet. I would only be going because of Rachel McAdams. I'll do some research. I will look into this play and see if it's more interesting to me. So then we get to the stuff that I want to do, but it's not necessarily a must. I'm pretty sure I want to go and see these shows. Talk me into them in the comment section down below, or tell me not to if you think it's a mistake. Starting with one off Broadway, Oh Mary. And the only reason this isn't a must is because I feel like it's been so popular and it's now selling so well off Broadway, it's had this big old extension, that it might have a further life. And if something's going to have a further life, I'm always more intrigued to see it in that subsequent production, especially, I don't know if this is a production that might move to Broadway, but I've heard great things about this without being able to fully get a grip on what it is. I get a lot of queer vibes from this. The word burlesque has been thrown around. It seems to be very funny, very entertaining. It has Conrad Ricamora in, which is a huge plus for me. Do we think I need to see this on this trip? Or is it going to come back in some sort of future iteration? Is that a chance I want to take? Then we have The Heart of Rock and Roll, which is a new musical, a jukebox musical using the songs of Huey Lewis. And shout out to theatre influencers and their importance, because I was not interested in this show. I thought this was another jukebox musical that was a bio musical telling the story of Huey Lewis, and that's not what this is. Not only did I learn that because of influencer content that was created when my friends got invited to a press day, but they showed me really exciting clips from the show. The cast is fantastic, first of all, and has some of my favourite performers in, but also there's this one bubble wrap tap dancing sequence where they're tap dancing on bubble wrap and using the popping noises to create the tap dancing sounds, and that alone basically convinced me I needed to see this show. It seems fun and whimsical, and that's something I like in a Broadway show, so I really want to go and see it. Then we have Illinois, and I'm not all the way convinced this is a show for me because it is predominantly a dance show, which is not my go-to medium. I am a theatre person, I am within that a musical theatre person, and dance is kind of after that, but I've heard that the storytelling within it is really fantastic. I've heard great word of mouth. It's transferring in a last minute Tony's bid to the St. James Theatre after Spamalot is closing early. So do I want to go see Illinois? I think I do. Then we have a couple more plays. We have Mother Play, which is going to the Hayes, and I just love going back to the Helen Hayes Theatre. I think that's a really special space, and the chance to see Jessica Lange on stage and Jim Parsons and Celia Keenan-Bolger, that's an incredible cast that I would love to go and see in this play. I mean, in fairness, I know as little about this play as I did about Mary Jane, but this has 3 really exciting performers in, so I feel like it gives it a little bit more weight. I'm a tourist at the end of the day. The other is Doubt. Now, this was getting ready to start previews last time we were in New York, and I feel like because we're arriving at the end of the run, there's less that I can do in terms of covering this production. Like, there's just of less value. Like, I could do a review, but it would be closing. At the same time, I think it's a really important play that I have never seen a production of yet, so I would like to tick that off that list as well. Then we have some new musicals. I would really like to go and see Suffs. I'm so intrigued about it. I am hearing exciting things about it. I think we've been anticipating its Broadway arrival for a while now. It's another of the shows that sort of is coming in the wake of Hamilton. I feel it's got an incredible cast. I would love to go and see Suffs. The other is Hell's Kitchen, which is in previews right now, I believe, at the Schubert Theatre, but it uses some new and mostly pre-existing music from Alicia Keys. I'm not a huge Alicia Keys person, but like if you played me a song, I'd be like, oh, I know that song from the radio. Again, cast is fantastic, and I'm just intrigued about the vibes of this production. I've heard very different sort of polarizing responses, and that always has me intrigued to work out where I'm going to end up on that spectrum of response. Then we have some heavy hitter revivals, one of which is Cabaret. Now, this is on the I want to see it list and not on the must list, simply because I don't know if I'm going to be able to get tickets. Like, Cabaret is going to be the hottest ticket in town, I think, while I'm in New York, and also I just saw it in the West End. I saw it last week at Gala Night here in London with Cara Delevingne. If I get the chance to see it on Broadway, I'm absolutely going to say yes to that, but, you know, I've seen Eddie Redmayne do the show before in London. I would love to see the Broadway production. I am so intrigued about the rest of that Broadway cast, but it's not going to kill me if I don't get the opportunity. It'll just wound me a little bit. Then there is The Wiz, and I keep hearing really conflicting things about The Wiz. I heard so much positive about it, and then I heard other little negatives about it, and again, that makes me really intrigued to work out where I stand. I also am not very familiar with The Wiz. Like, obviously its material is not principally created for me and aimed at me as a white audience member, as a white British audience member. This is not my culture. But I think the music that I've heard is so exciting. Again, the cast is great. I would love to go to the Marquee Theatre. I really want to go and see The Wiz, and I'm hoping that I do get the opportunity. Then we have the must-see shows, and that doesn't mean I've got tickets yet. It just means that I'm gonna, you know, I've got 2 good kidneys, so I can get rid of one of the... Is a kidney the thing that you only need one of? I think so. Can you sell an appendix, or does no one want those? I don't know why anyone would want those. One of them is a return trip to a show I've seen already. I am talking about Sweeney Todd. Because of the Sutton Foster and Aaron Tveit of it all, I speculated a lot about their casting. I have to put my money where my mouth is, and by that I mean queue up in a rush line to get tickets, because I am so intrigued. I'm a huge fan of both of them as performers, and I am just so intrigued to see for myself what they are like in this role, but also Joe Locke as Tobias. I am desperate to see Joe. Huge Heartstopper fan. Aaron and I both are, and we would just love. There's no way we're going to Manhattan and we're not going to try and see Joe Locke and Aaron Sutton in Sweeney Todd. It has to happen. Then we have Water for Elephants. Now this was a show I was a little bit concerned about because, you know, when we went in January, we were catching all of the stuff that was closing early, and I was thinking, is there anything that might, you know, struggle to stay open, that's opening after we leave and might not still be open by the time that we come back later in the spring? And I was worried for Water for Elephants, but now it seems to have picked up a lot more speed and it's had some really favourable reviews. I actually think I could really vibe with this show, and a lot of what I'm seeing from it seems like it might really appeal to me. So I'm really desperate to go and see Water for Elephants now. I love puppetry on stage as well, and I love circus elements. I think I could really love this. Then we have Stereophonic. Now I'm determined to try and make sure that I'm more aware of the plays at the Tonys this year, and this is the other one that I've heard of as being a huge contender for Best New Play. I've heard great things about this production, and it's like this fly on the wall kind of an audience experience, which is one of my favourite things to do. So determined I am to go see Stereophonic. In terms of the Tonys for musicals, I feel like The Outsiders might be getting some Tony buzz, and I'm starting to think that could be the front runner for the Best New Musical Tony Award. I say this because The Notebook didn't get the strongest reviews when it opened. I think it could now go to The Outsiders, so I absolutely have to go and see The Outsiders. I've also heard great things about it. Someone recently got in touch with me on Instagram to encourage me to go and see it. Shout out to you if that was you, but it has put it absolutely firmly on my must-see list. I will not leave Manhattan without seeing The Outsiders. And the final one in this section is The Who's Tommy. Again, I've heard great word of mouth about this. It will make me sad going back to the Nederlander Theatre and Shucks not being there, but, you know, I don't know The Who's Tommy. That's another gap in my musical theatre history knowledge. I do not know this show very well, beyond, like, Pinball Wizard and the one where he's like, I'm a sensation. I probably do know more of the songs from Tommy, but I'll be sitting there watching it going, oh, this is from that. All the more reason for me to go and see it. And then we arrive at the shows that I can tell you I am definitely seeing, which is not a very long list. I have 3 shows confirmed right now, less than 2 weeks before I'm going to Manhattan. So, you know, the vlog series that I'll be making on this trip might be a lot of like rush lines and TKTS and last minute affordable ticket methods. We're going to do what we have to do, but the ones I am definitely going to be seeing are as follows. So we have The Notebook. This I think is going to be the first show we see on our trip this year. I am very excited about it. I don't actually know the film. Do you think I should watch the film first, or should I just go and experience this story through the musical lens? Because it's not an adaptation of the film, it's an adaptation of the book, and I'm not going to be able to read the book between now and then. But I've heard a lot of positive things about this production from my friends, from other theatre goers, and from theatre influencers, and so I'm excited to go and find out more about that. And again, it's at a theatre I haven't been to before. I think it's at the Schoenfeld. I haven't been to the Schoenfeld. Next up, there is Lempicka. I do not know if it's meant to be pronounced Lempicka, because that, I think, is the appropriate Polish pronunciation, but everyone attached to the Broadway show is saying Lempicka. And listen, Eden Espinosa and Beth Level are in this, and, you know, that is reason enough for me to want to go see it, but I am definitely going to see that, which I am excited about. Again, I am hearing, like, Tony's buzz around these performances. Everything I'm seeing from previews of the show, again, they allowed theatre influencers to film a lot of their press preview, which they did on the stage at the theatre. Is it the Longacre? I think it's the Longacre. That made me really excited about it, and so intrigued about this one, very excited. And then finally, I am going to be seeing The Great Gatsby on Broadway, which means I can finally review this production, because I talked about my thoughts and feelings around it without officially reviewing, because I saw it on its first preview at Paper Mill Playhouse. And this is exciting to me as well. I love the idea of getting to follow a show in its development. I get to do that quite a lot here in the UK. I've never had the chance to do that in New York before, see a show regionally and then see it on Broadway. I don't know if it's going to be a million miles apart because it was a pretty quick turnaround transfer, but I'm excited to get to see those performances again, to see Jeremy Jordan and Ivan Oblazada and the rest of that supporting cast. I'm very excited to go see that show and to dress up for it. But those are the shows that I am planning to see on my New York trip this time around. If there's anything I didn't mention that you want to direct my focus towards, please let me know. If there are any other sort of theatre going adjacent things, any restaurant recommendations you want to give me, comment down below, send me a message on Instagram, or you can email me at mickeyjoetheatre@gmail.com. If you would like to meet me during that trip, then stay tuned. I will probably be posting on my social media if we are doing a meetup, and for a 2-week trip I expect we will try to at some point. But I would just like to say thank you all again for watching the New York videos that I post, because that allows me to justify getting on a plane and going back to New York as as often as I've been able to do, which has been really exciting. Honestly, it's not too long before I need to start packing a suitcase. That's both exciting and terrifying. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!